Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the June 2017 edition of PI Fridays. My name is Brandon Wilson, and I'm the training specialist here at Advisa. And before we get too far, I'd like to take a couple minutes to answer some frequently asked questions. If you'd like a recorded version of this webinar, just head over to the client resources page referenced on this slide. Note that it's not linked to on any of our pages on the site, so jot it down. The page also houses our Access PI tutorials as well as other tools and videos. It really is worth your time. If you'd like to sign up for more offerings like this, go to our homepage and click advisausa.com and click on the Training Dates tab. There you'll find links to sign up for our refreshers in both Indiana and Michigan, our yearly Inspire conference, formerly known as User Group. And as we go through today's presentation, feel free to write questions in the question box on the right of your screen, and I'll make sure to take some time at the end to answer each one. Today's webinar is part of Advisa's PI learning experience, and this graphic really helps to represent the purpose of offerings such as this. You've all been through an in-person training to get the foundation of PI knowledge. This, along with our refreshers, the client resources page, and the Inspire conference, all serve to take you from that theoretical understanding into full-on usage of the tool, from knowing to doing. With that goal in mind, I hope you'll take some of the things that we cover today and try them out. Over the past few years, it seems as though the universal belt has been tightening. We're trying to get more, better, greater results with less. I'm not saying this hasn't always been the case, but recently, it seems that volume has been turned up quite a bit. What's nice is that PI can really help. It won't make another 20 people magically appear, but it can help you to get the most out of what you have, how you can increase your people's productivity and keep them engaged to where they're bringing their discretionary effort to work, that above and beyond, that helps you get those enhanced results. And to put it simply, get more from less. Because PI gives us insight into where a person gets their self-confidence. And that one single insight can be the difference between an incredibly productive workforce and one that's stuck. Let me tell a quick story to help illustrate this. And if I had to title the story, it would be Everything is 20/20 in Hindsight, that old adage that comes to mind when we screw something up. And don't worry, this story is about just that. A time when I can look back and point out every single step that I took to take my situation from copacetic to pretty terrible. And as a highest D, I spend a lot of time thinking about those moments that precipitate disaster. This was years ago. I was managing a team of 5 on a project whose deadline was fast approaching. We had all been working for months to complete said project, and there was quite a bit on the line. That very afternoon, we were presenting the results to a few key stakeholders, and no one wanted to mess this up. So stress levels were a bit high, and there were a few loose ends that needed to be tied up. I should probably tell you a little bit about the project. See, the team I was managing was my 8th grade technical theater class, and the project was the 8th grade play, Peter Pan. The stakeholders were their principal, my boss, their teachers, as well as all of the students' friends and family. The students had spent months in my class designing, then building the set, hanging the lights, perfecting the sound. As I mentioned before, there was quite a bit on the line. The doors were to be open to the audience in 30 minutes, and we had a few key issues. The light board was malfunctioning. We needed to replace a lamp, and a lamp is just a fancy theater term for a light bulb, in one of our spotlights, and a caster was sticking for some unknown reason under one of the set pieces. Each of the 5 members of my crew had their pre-show checklists and were working through them individually. I was stuck with our archaic light board trying to determine what was going wrong this time. As to the spotlight and caster issues, I figured the first kids to finish their checklist would get to tackle those other problems. And the first student to finish was Maury. Maury was one of those students I was excited to have in class, sharp, inquisitive, driven, fun, always pushing to try something new. Now, Maury didn't take the PI. He was too young, but after working with him for 5 years, this is a pretty close approximation. So Maury finishes his checklist and runs up to me. All right, Mr. Wilson, I'm ready. What's next? Without even thinking, I say, well, we need to get a new lamp in the spotlight. and Maury was off to change the lamp, a task that we had practiced so many times in class that it was rote. No student in my class could get past the first week without learning how to safely and properly change out a lamp. I trusted each and every student to do it. About a minute later, McKenna, another sharp and fun kid, runs up to me as I'm beginning to mumble mystical prayers to the not functioning light board. And she says, "Mr. Wilson, is there anything else that needs to be done?" Again, without thinking, I look at my list and I say, "The caster under the rolling platforms, something's wrong with it. Just get it to work." McKenna's 12-year-old face scrunched up, then said, "Okay," and walked towards the stage. I continued the mystical mumblings, rebooting and rebooting the light console as I watched the minutes tick away. All of a sudden, Maury was back. "Done. What's next?" Well, I crossed his item off the list and said, "Can you see if any of your other classmates need help on their pre-show checklists?" And he was gone, going classmate by classmate, checking in. Good old Maury. All of a sudden, the light console dinged. It was up and running. It was a miracle. I checked that item off the list. One item left, that rolling platform. I looked at the time, 10 minutes until the doors opened. I ran over to the stage just as Maury yelled out, "Mr. Wilson, everyone's checklist is done." Good. I found the platform sitting on the stage behind the main curtain, with McKenna just standing there staring, her face scrunched up. I think if you could have amplified her thoughts, it would have sounded like gears grinding. I interrupted the grinding. "McKenna, how are we doing? Do we know what the problem is?" Well, the wheel doesn't seem to be spinning right. It's kind of stuck." I responded, "Okay, so what have we done to try and fix it?" Well, I got down and I looked under and I tried to move it in different directions, but it's stuck, so I didn't know what to do. I think this was the moment that I sighed. I thought of the fact that she'd been working on this problem for about 20 minutes now and had come to the conclusion that the wheel was having issues. That's why I sent her down here to fix it. Why didn't she get some people to help her lift it up? Why didn't she then figure out what was wrong and either replace the caster or fix it? My frustration was mounting. The audience was coming in whether we liked it or not in just a few minutes. So I said, "Okay, so we're right back where we started." Probably not the best thing I could have said. I got down on my knees to look under the platform, realizing that Maury was kneeling down next to me. So I said, "Maury, you take that corner. McKenna, you take the other. Let's lift this up." So we lifted. And from our new vantage point, we could see the problem. A screw had gotten lodged in the caster, preventing it from spinning properly. Before I said anything, Maury said, "There it is, a screw," grabbed the screw and handed it to another member of the crew standing nearby to throw away. I called for someone to resweep the stage and make sure there was nothing else on the ground, and we laid back down the platform. I called, "Places, everyone, get in your places," as I heard the doors open up. Phew, we made it. I went up to the light booth and donned a headset. Those are just the walkie-talkies that every member of the student crew used to communicate the technical changes during the show. I just monitored in case something went wrong. As the show began, everything seemed to be going well, though pretty quickly I was surprised by McKenna. She was in charge of many of the different set movements throughout the play, and to this point, she had been one of the most dependable crew members. She knew this show backwards and forwards, even helping other members of the crew with their component because she knew the script so thoroughly. Yet today, she was asking question after question about pieces that I was confident she had already known. Then she was even late on a few of her set moves because she was quadruple checking to make sure that what she was doing was right. At first, I was frustrated. In my mind, I was thinking, well, first the caster and now this. I guess I just can't trust her. Then it hit me. It was that everything is 20/20 in hindsight moment. I had done this. I was the cause. Every question she was asking, every second that she was late on her cues, that was because of me. I thought back to the moment I was tinkering with the light board and McKenna asked if there was anything she could help with. Being so focused on trying to fix that light board, and I know I'm making excuses, but I neglected to think through what McKenna needed to be productive. What would give her the confidence to do what I had asked? So let's think about McKenna's profile and highest Ds. They get their confidence externally. And as her teacher, that means from me, telling her what perfect is, from having the clear expectations as to what she was supposed to do as well as how she was supposed to do it. And I barely gave her any information, and because of that, she was ostensibly unproductive for 20 minutes. Then I questioned what she had been doing, criticizing the way in which she had attempted to solve the issue. That then crippled her confidence in areas where she had already proven success, the different set moves in the show. The ramifications were widespread, so long story short, my lack of forethought hurt the end result of the show and the morale of a member of the team. And quite a few people were frustrated, including McKenna, the rest of the class that had to watch the mistakes unfold in their production, and well, lastly, myself. What's interesting is that I approached McKenna afterwards and apologized for the way I acted and took responsibility for the caster situation as well as the problems with the cues. And she responded by saying, I wanted to lift up the platform to look at the caster. I just didn't want to break anything. And I didn't want to get in trouble for lifting it up. So I looked underneath but couldn't see anything. So I just tried to move it different ways to fix it. And all of that makes perfect sense for a high SD trying to mitigate risk. But I was blind to all of that in the heat of the moment. See, PI, it's like a personal translator telling us how to move those people around us that aren't propelled by the same forces as we are. But when times are tough, we tend to revert to our native tongue, which provides us with these basic and false tenets that everyone knows what we know and everyone needs what we need. And as a result, everyone gets frustrated, engagement goes down, and all of a sudden, productivity is stymied. So we're going to get back to the basics today and walk through the 4 factors and what they tell us about where a person gets their self-confidence. Remember that the root of a person's productivity at work is directly linked to their self-confidence because self-confidence is the currency of productivity. If you don't have that jotted down somewhere, take a second and do so. Self-confidence is the currency of productivity. In my time at Advisa, it's one of the most profound learnings I've had. If you look back at your life, think about those times when you've been most self-confident. How productive were you? How about those times where your self-confidence was in the gutter? What about then? There's a direct correlation between high self-confidence and high productivity, and the same on the low side. And imagine if all our people's confidence was at its peak. Think about how much more we could accomplish collectively. If you do have the profiles of your team around somewhere, now might be a good time to pull those in front of you and take some notes. Hopefully you'll walk away with some good strategies as to how you can boost their confidence and therefore their productivity. As we're breaking this down, for each drive, we'll talk through the source of their confidence, some quick tips to get a jump on building it, as well as some long-term strategies. We'll finish talking about each drive by mentioning what you should avoid when managing them, those things that tend to erode their confidence pretty quickly. And we'll begin with highest days. And truth be told, this drive is the hardest to have a direct impact on. And that's because the source of self-confidence for a highest day is internal. Now, that doesn't mean they're any more or less self-confident than those of us that get our confidence externally. It just means that your words of encouragement aren't going to do much to drive productivity. It's them having a goal in their sights that they can then achieve, a change that they can make that drives them. That's why high A's are always taking apart their world to understand it. It's the only way that they can put it back together their way to have an impact and have control over something. If we talk about quick tips for high A's, and this is especially relevant if you've just hired one, it's all about setting up short-term wins. This is a great way not only to build their confidence, but also works as an onboarding strategy to give them the opportunity to earn their independence, freedom, and control. It's the baby steps to get fully up and running. And this can be as simple as giving them something to master. Let's imagine we hire a highest day into a managerial role at a retail store. To start by saying we want to increase profits at the store by 20%, decrease turnover by 10%, and change to a more team-oriented culture. Well, okay, but there are likely to be some major roadblocks they're going to run into when trying to accomplish those big goals. And if they left a job that wasn't that fulfilling and their confidence is not high to begin with, we want to give them smaller, more achievable, short-term goals along with those big ones. Something like, I want you to take a look at how we've been implementing the suggestive sell program. Your first big goal is to make it better. Something about the way it's currently working just isn't getting the results. The long-term strategy for highest A's is all about determining where they want to be within 5 years and laying out the milestones for how they can earn that. High A's are always focused on the results, and to have that long-term goal can be a huge motivator, especially at the beginning of their tenure within your organization. One thing that's really important to make sure of when you have high A's working for you or on your team is that you're not putting them in a position where they can't have an impact. If you have a high A that feels stifled in their position, that they can't fix things, one of two outcomes will typically occur. Either they will leave and find a job that gives them problems to solve, or they'll begin to create problems that they can fix, neither of which have a positive outcome for your organization. Let's talk about highest B's. While highest B's do have some similarity to highest A's in that they're trying to change the world around them, the difference is in what they're trying to change. Highest A's are trying to change things and events. Highest B's are trying to change how people feel. Therefore, their confidence comes externally from being noticed. High B's want to be noticed for the specialness that is them. It's the exact reason why highest B's are always noticing the specialness in others, whether it be a haircut, a new shirt, something amazing you did at the last presentation. They want to pick out those things you did because that's exactly what would build their confidence. People give others what they themselves need. Some quick tips for building the confidence of highest B's are first of all, if they do something well, call it out. Make sure to pull them aside and let them know how glad you are that they're a part of the team. That personal recognition is wind in the sails to a high B. More than a few times I've heard the retort, but they're just doing their job. Why should I have to commend them for that? And my response is, you're welcome to not notice them for the contributions they make, but I promise that if you try it once, you'll quickly reap the rewards of enhanced productivity. Being noticed fuels them. One big long-term strategy for the high B's is similar to that of the high A's. Determine how they want to be seen within the organization. Determine what's important, then help them set up milestones as to how they can get to that status, whether it be as a manager or the person with the corner office, whatever. The key is to determine that and work to create milestones to help them get there. And as they make the necessary steps on the path to that end, notice them and make sure the rest of the organization is seeing their progress too. One thing that's really important when you have highest B's working around you is making sure that you're not stifling their ability to be noticed as an individual. I'll never forget the time that I worked at a restaurant in Nashville. Now, I'm a highest B, and the owner was a very low B. While it was my job to develop new cocktails, I could never name them fun, Brandon-created titles. They were given standardized names like Bistro Bourbon or Bistro Drop. On top of that, when I was laughing too much with a given customer, I was no longer allowed to serve them, and another bartender would take over their tab. All focus on the individual was strictly prohibited. While this created an atmosphere where we could get customers in and out quickly, I didn't last long as an employee. The fun, and therefore the motivation, had been quickly sucked out, and there was no discretionary effort brought to the table. So that's on the high B side. Let's take a look at high C's. The C drive is one that gets its confidence from familiarity. Familiarity with both the people they work with and the processes of their day. This is why high C's tend to be the folks that not only know your name, but the names of your spouse, your kids, your interests. They learn those things about you because that's how they get familiar with people, through talking and listening. One of the greatest quick tips for building the confidence of high C's is to take a few minutes to get to know them. Make it your goal to learn their significant other's name and one of their favorite pastimes. Those simple conversations reap great benefits in that it shows you care. And for a person that is driven to lay down roots, to show you care, is to keep a high C forever. The long-term strategy with high C's is to build a relationship. Show them that you care about them as an employee, as well as knowing that anytime a big change comes, take some time to let them get familiar with what's coming around the bend before it appears. This sets that high C up for success. One big thing that you want to avoid when working with high C's is interrupting. It so stifles productivity that it's not worth it. Do your best to wait until they get to a stopping point or shoot them an email. Surprises also tend to be responded to negatively. When a high C is prepared, they tend to respond more effectively. The last piece here is to try not to be a tornado. There are many low Cs out there, and you know who you are, low Cs, that walk into a room and like to shake things up. The intensity, that need for immediate response, the reprioritizing, it's the fastest way to alienate a high C because it strips them of any semblance of familiarity, which directly correlates to huge drops in productivity. Let's look at the last of the factors, the D drive. High Ds get their self-confidence externally from knowing what perfect is. It's the reason high Ds spend so much time researching and asking questions and researching and asking questions and researching more. They want all the information to help define what perfection is so that they can make their task mistake-free. And when you have a high D on your team, one quick tip is to know that if you're giving a task that doesn't have all the information, which can be hard sometimes, make sure that you're checking in with them regularly to give feedback and to make sure they're on the right track. It helps to develop that definition of perfect. On the long-term side, try to tune yourself into how much information your high D needs to start a project, and then proactively check back to give feedback once they need more. High Ds, depending on their tenure, intelligence, experience, and knowledge base, are all going to need different amounts of information to get going and then to finish a task. For you to be aware of that and to have the ability to know when they need that fuel of direction and information is going to help both you and your high D in the long run. One thing you want to avoid with a high D, especially if they are new to your organization, but also if they're working on a task that's different from their normal duties, is to assume that they're always going to come to you if they need information. There are many times when a high D feels as though they should know what they don't, which can make them reticent to ask. This doesn't mean you need to check in every 5 minutes. It just means that it's not a bad idea to stop in and ask how things are going and if they need anything from you. The more present and willing you are to give information, the more likely they are to ask, and the better the result is likely to be. We, as leaders, have the power to either fuel the productivity of our people or siphon their ability to perform. It's a great responsibility. And hopefully, you're walking away from this webinar with both some quick tips and more long-term strategies to build the confidence of those around you, which has a direct impact on their engagement and therefore productivity, getting you more from less. I want to pause for a minute to take some questions. So feel free to type them into the question box to the right of your screen. And while you're doing that, I want to take a look at some upcoming events. And the first big one, and this is really exciting, but we've announced the date for our 2017 Inspire Conference. It's going to be October 5th at the Alexander Hotel downtown. This is going to be so exciting. We've already got, I think, 5 speakers lined up. This is going to be an incredible day where clients come, share best practices, and learn from each other. And there is no cost to attend the Inspire Conference. I would highly recommend that you all sign up and come. We also have coming up a few trainings. We've got an open sales training, our customer-focused selling training on August 10th is going to be here in our home office. And this training, it builds out a sales process with the basic understanding that relationships drive results. And so it helps to build skills throughout the 5 steps of a sales process that build a consistent relationship with the person you're trying to sell to. So there's that training. There's also Becoming a PI Practitioner, the 2-day PI training. We've got a few of those coming up in Indiana and in Michigan, as well as the 1-day PI training, again, both in Indiana and Michigan. And if you are on social media, be sure to connect with us. You'll find an Advise a Company page on each of these platforms. On LinkedIn, you'll also find individual pages, including all of our management consultants. And you will want to make sure that on LinkedIn to follow Dr. Frederica Joyner on our team. because she writes tons of great posts called Thinking Small About Big Ideas. And if you've not met her, she's our leadership and organizational development consultant. She's the designer and primary facilitator of our Leadership Academy and is also one of our experts on emotional intelligence. So to follow her, just click on a post. So I'm not seeing any questions at this point, but I'll stick around for a few more minutes just in case there are any. So I'll give it a few more minutes. And I guess while we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll where you'll have a couple options. If you'd like to be contacted to discuss how this topic can be applied to your organization, we'd be happy to reach out to you. If you know somebody that could benefit from PI, please let us know. We do work off of referrals, so we'd love to reach out to them. And you also have the option of writing more in the question box. Somebody asked if you can get a copy of the slides. Those will be posted up on our website on the Client Resources page under PI Fridays, either later today or at the latest next week after the holiday. But they definitely will be available. So again, I'll stick around for another minute or two. But if I don't hear from anyone, I hope everybody has a great holiday weekend. Yeah, thank you all so much.